Welcome back. So we connect with Tobago once again. Tobago's budget was presented back in June. The debates have passed, but we're only now chatting with the Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary of the Finance and the Economy, Mr. Joel Jack. He's chatting with us at a time where there are more concerns over the sea and air bridge. And there have been comments from various stakeholders over what they say are challenges to business brought about by the unpredictable bridges. Mr. Jack, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Let me say a pleasant good morning to all of Tobago and to all of Trinidad and Tobago. And probably before we start getting into the harsh and hard economic numbers, I just want to thank our championship athletic team for giving this country a pre-independence gift, and congratulations to Mr. Richards and all of the team. I think we're all proud in Tobago and Trinidad and Tobago, and as well to Trinidad and Tobago Night Riders last night. So if my eyes look a little bit sleepy, that is the reason why. But good morning and thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you with us this morning. Of course, we'd like to talk about the air and sea bridge issue and the impact it has had on tourism. Of course, with the budget injection, the request you made for $355 million in the tourism sector. Let's talk about the impact this has had so far.
Well, in the context of the air and sea bridge, I think those must be seen in the context of an essential service or essential services to Tobago. And we continue to work both with the Caribbean Airlines and as well with the Port Authority Board in terms of seeing how we can implement an effective air and sea bridge. And I'm confident that having had discussions with the current chairman that while we have to go back to the drawing board and the situation continues to be untenable, I'm confident that we will have a resolution very soon in terms of another passenger ferry coming to Tobago. But from all reports coming from the chamber and the rest of the business community, the Cabo Star has been doing its job and even providing excess capacity. With respect to CAL, we continue to work with Caribbean Airlines to have a dedicated air service. I know there are a number of persons in the private sector who are also thinking about setting up, they're also considering having a service to Tobago, and that is what we want to see, even as the government and the Tobago House of Assembly, as we work to resolve the issue, just hearing the subtle hints from the private sector that they're also interested in filling up the gap. I think this is what we want to see, that the private sector playing their role as the government and the Tobago House of Assembly as we continue to provide the enabling environment for prosperity and business confidence both in Trinidad and Tobago.
We also understand, and I'm sure as you are aware, the Prime Minister is scheduled to have a meeting at the Magdalena Grand with several stakeholders next week, Monday. However, some politicians and persons are saying it may very well be another PR stunt. How do you respond to that?
Well, I would like to commend the Prime Minister in terms of deepening the conversation and continuing consultation with all stakeholders. I think this is what democracy is all about, and he should be commended for having a sit-down and a conversation, and in terms of mapping out the way forward in terms of resolving this untenable situation with the sea bridge. And I think the Prime Minister should be commended for not, it's damn if you do, damn if you don't, because if he waited probably a day later to make that announcement, persons might have been clamoring and indicating that he should be coming to Tobago to have a conversation. But he, all credits to the Prime Minister, he took the initiative and indicated that he's coming, and given the importance of the situation, he's leading in front, and together with the Chief Secretary and the rest of the Tobago House of Assembly, we will sit down and have frank discussions, first with the government and their team, and then we will engage stakeholders as we come to an amicable resolution to the situation.
How would you describe the state of Tobago's economy at this time?
I think given what is happening nationally in terms of the national economic slowdown, I think the Tobago economy should be commended in terms of the management of the overall economy. Just to put it in context, you might recall that last year, given the Assembly's allocation from central government, there was a significant decrease of over $404 million. And if we place everything in context, we're looking at a decrease of in excess of $500 million. And we were able to strategically to manage the Tobago economy to prevent any fallout in terms of employment, to keep the Tobago economy on a stable footing. And in terms of the recent report coming from the IMF, where the IMF signaled that the economy is at the point of turnaround, I think we have done an excellent job in managing the overall health of the Tobago economy. Year on year, on average, over the past 5 or so years, the Tobago economy grew on average of 2.7%, and we have not even during these challenging economic periods, we saw contribution to national economic development increase from 1.9% to over 2.2%, and I continue to make the statement that any investment in Tobago's economy is an investment in national economic development. And given the fact that we were able to increase our contribution to the nation's GDP, signals our intent and really signals our increased contribution. And as we look forward to increased investment in the tourism sector, with sandals coming soon and all the ancillary investments, in terms of the new airport terminal, with the expansion of electricity generation at Cove, as well as the construction of a desalination plant, and all the other major projects earmarked by the Tobago House of Assembly. For example, in Windward, Tobago, with the new administration complex, and all the other major projects that we have on earmarked for the island. I see that all these projects would add to the economic health of the island, and in terms of using construction to give us that fillip in the economy. I think although we're in the midst of challenging economic times, this 2017-2018 period should signal a turnaround and an increase for us here in Tobago.
So in the midst of the challenges, you mentioned that there have been successful attempts to steer the economy in such a way to prevent significant job losses. So is it correct to say that there are no fears of job losses, for instance, under the THA and private sector?
Well, in the Tobago House of Assembly, we have taken a decision to maintain employment levels. We have also taken a corresponding decision as well to increase productivity and to treat with the issue of productivity in a very serious manner. I think the Chief Secretary has led the charge, and we have signaled our intent in maintaining employment levels, but having an increase in productivity. In terms of the private sector, I know there may have been some minor fall, but nothing significant. In terms of the unemployment numbers, they continue to be below 5%, and we are heartened in terms of the numbers and what they signal in terms of the employment levels here in Tobago.
So let's dive into self-governance of Tobago. Do you think Tobago is at the point where it can manage its affairs, let's say, on its own?
Well, let me put that in context. In terms of what we are seeking is not separation from Trinidad and Tobago. What we are seeking is greater autonomy to manage the affairs of the island. I believe we have done so successfully since the introduction of the Tobago House of Assembly Act 40 of 1996, and the Act came a long way from the 1980s with the inception of the Tobago House of Assembly. But the Act in its current form is limited, and there's significant need for revision. For example, the Tobago House of Assembly, we have our own credit rating. We took the decision to approach Moody Investor Service, and we have our own rating separate and apart from the sovereign And what we are saying is that the Act limits us from engaging in modern financial transactions and for us to seek alternative financial mechanisms to fund and to accelerate socio-economic development on the island. So just on that one point, and in terms of how we calculate the revenue generated by Tobago, we see that there's a major need for us to have a new Tobago House of Assembly Act and to give the Tobago House of Assembly devolved powers, greater powers in managing the affairs of the island.
Let's talk a little bit about property tax. Are people submitting forms in Tobago? What was their initial reaction to that announcement of property tax? Also, where would the revenue be going? Would it be going to the central government or THA?
I must commend Tobagonians. When the Minister of Finance announced the reintroduction of property tax, Tobagonians, they came out in their numbers, and we had to establish additional centers across the island, and they were willing to pay their fair share and to give their contribution in terms of the payment of taxes. Those taxes, when collected, remain in Tobago, and they are netted off against our allocation. And it is part of the Tobago House of Assembly Act in the context of when we collect government revenue separate and apart from Tobago House of Assembly revenue, that revenue is netted off against our allocation.
All right. Now, I'm quoting what you said from a newspaper article. You said, although the budget was being read at a time when the country was faced with serious economic challenges, that you are optimistic that Tobago will see growth in its economy with the projects outlined for fiscal 2018. Do you care to recap some of those projects? And I know some emphasis was placed on the cocoa industry as well.
Well, definitely. In the context of national economic diversification, we see Tobago playing a major part, and given the need to earn foreign exchange, the Tobago House of Assembly, as outlined in my budget statement in June, we continue to place the focus on economic diversification, and in addition to the tourism sector, greater focus will be placed in terms of revitalizing the agricultural sector. And yes, cocoa factored in a major part in our plans to revive the agricultural sector. The Executive Council recently approved a new committee, the Agricultural Revitalization Team, and they would be tasked with coming up with new policies and plans to to revive the agricultural sector, to get persons moving away from becoming primary producers to get into agro-processing. And I'm really heartened by some of the ideas in terms of looking for new technology and for looking for new and improved ways of doing things in the agricultural sector. Additionally, we signal our support to continue to encourage entrepreneurship through the Business Development Unit and through the Sector Development Unit in the Division of Finance and the Economy. We also place emphasis on the ICT sector. During the budget statement, I was excited about the prospects for the ICT sector and our $5 million, $5 million investment in a new ICT Innovation Center at Signal Hill at the Tobago Information Technology Limited, as well as the new $15 million data center at the Cove Eco-Industrial and Business Park. So in addition, we continue playing our part in terms of accelerating national economic diversification and really attempting to increase our contribution to this nation's GDP.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure chatting with you, of course. That was Joel Jack, Secretary of Finance. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you for being part of our program. We'll see you tomorrow, same time. News is up next. Stay tuned.